Hello, everybody out there in LinkedIn land. My name is Dawn Burke, and I'm a senior consultant for a great organization called Recruiting Toolbox. And I am so excited to introduce to all of you the second episode of TA Community Conversation, which is a LinkedIn live series, again, brand new. And it was created by the great folks at LinkedIn to help deliver insights from a lot of talent acquisition experts, professionals in the industry, to discuss how our industry indeed is addressing challenges during this time, which really is very crazy. So today we're going to be discussing something that is really near and dear to my heart, something I've been keeping up with my entire career, and that is how do we maintain employee morale during these challenging times? A very relevant and timely topic. So I am really excited to be joined by our special guest today. It's somebody who I've gotten to know over the last few weeks. He is definitely the smartest guy in the room. His name is Justin Black, and he is head of people science at Glint, which is an incredible employee engagement platform. And I have to tell you, excited to learn about the data from Glint as well. So welcome, Justin. Thanks for being here.
Thanks, Don. I'm so excited to be here, and it's so nice to see you.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. So before we begin, folks, I want to hear from you. The reason the show is called TA Community Conversations is because we want to have a conversation with you, the community. So you're going to check out that comments section below and go ahead and populate it with your questions throughout this presentation. We're going to try to answer as many of them as we can. Obviously, we can't get to all of them, but we're going to give shout outs throughout the program. So thank you for being very, very engaged and involved. So let's get to our agenda because we've got a long way to go and a short time to get there. So Justin's really going to touch on three major things. Number one, how can talent acquisition teams maintain employee morale during these uncertain times? Number two, what steps can TA teams take to support employee morale and company culture at large, which I'm totally excited to hear about that. And number three, what and why is it important to focus efforts on company culture now, and equally as important in the critical months to come? So again, we've got a lot to get to. So Justin, I'm going to throw it to you. Let's start with topic number one. So really, how can TA teams right now maintain this important employee morale during these times that really, really are unprecedented and uncertain?
Yeah, great. Thanks, Dawn. So this is the put your own oxygen mask on first part of the, I think, part of the conversation. So just for some context, Glint's mission is to help people be happier and more successful at work. And we do that by making feedback easier to seek, to give, and to use. And my team in particular is focused on understanding what we call people success, which in a nutshell is how do you bring your best self to work so you can do your best work, right? And I've been doing this for almost 20 years. A lot of my team members have also. One of the things that we've seen over time is that HR tends to experience dissatisfaction or disengagement or a lack of morale a little bit earlier than the rest of the organization, right? To use a crude metaphor would be like the canary in the coal mine, right?
Right.
Yeah. And now it's a little different, right? It's even worse, right? The unemployment data are staggering, hiring slowed, internal spend is cut. And I guess in a good news, kind of bad news scenario, we've sort of hit the bottom in terms of hiring. And we'll start to see it's kind of a gradual increase, meaning over years, not months. And so the question for me is for my partners in TA, whom I frankly worry about at times like this, is how do you take care of yourselves? And how do you take care of your own well-being and your own team's well-being? So I'll share one tip there, and then I'll pause for a second. The thing we use, the thing we've seen work most effectively, and we love threes, is to do what we call reflect, connect, and prioritize. And this is very simple. You can do it on your own in a few minutes. Reflection is just ask yourself a few questions. What's most important right now? What support do I need? And what do I want to learn? And then connect's about making sure you have the support to do those things. And prioritize is about like picking one thing, right? And focusing there, because there's going to be a lot that's going on that we can't control. So let me pause there on the short term and see what follow-up questions you have, Dawn, or what questions the community has for us.
Yeah, well, first of all, I have to say, as somebody who is a career TA leader and HR leader, I do think it is fascinating that the HR pros are feeling that stress first. And a lot of companies do have TA and HR as one unit. To me, I think that is very, very relevant information for this audience. And so what I would suggest is, especially when you said this starts with you, a lot of us feel we don't have the time for that connection. Like, how do we reflect? And it's a big misstep, I think, for our community to not take a breather every now and then, and just think about what's happening with us, because we certainly can't take care of other people. I mean, are you seeing that in your research or in the work you've done over many, many years?
Yeah, absolutely. And especially now, and especially in strained populations. So we collect a lot of comment data. So people can rate their satisfaction with the level of support they have or well-being that they feel, but they can also leave a comment. And there's so much richness in those comments about the experience. So people tell us things like, I know people are telling me to do less, but I feel like if I do less, my job will be at risk, right?
Yes.
If we're cutting here. And so how do I reconcile my own fear against what leaders are telling me to do? And it's just real for people. And this is why reflection is so important. And just to give yourself a break, actually like 2 minutes staring out the window is enough to boost your mental health a little bit. And so, if you haven't done it, start there. Just stare out the window for 2 minutes.
Yeah. No, now, so we have a question from an audience member. And we've got, again, some other things we definitely want to be throwing out at you for us to think about. So one of the things that happened throughout this is there was a poll that was taken before the episode. And we learned that burnout was top of mind. And of course, people are asking questions about burnout on the back channel. So Justin, how can TA teams really address burnout in their organization? Because burnout's been an issue. I've studied and talked about burnout for many years. It has been a chronic issue way before COVID. So what are we seeing now?
Yeah. So the good news is we are seeing some companies respond well to what I would say is make what is an increase in burnout be less than it could be, I guess is how I would describe it. The bad news is we do see an increase in the hit rate of burnout in our comments. So our system looks for phrases like, I'm completely exhausted and feeling unproductive. And when it sees that phrase, it'll tag it as this person's experience or maybe experiencing burnout, right? We don't know. Burnout is, distress experienced over a long period of time that makes you feel unproductive and exhausted. But we get a sense of it, right? And so when we look underneath the patterns of the data in those comments, we see some things that are helping people be less burnt out or more burnt out. One of them is workload, which is obvious.
Right.
The more work I have, the more stress I feel. One is the distraction and stress of working from home in a new situation. It's not remote work. Lots of people have worked remotely effectively for a long time. It's, being a remote worker and a remote parent and a remote teacher and all the things that, everyone's experiencing right now. And the other big one is prioritization. And we can talk more about this in a little bit. I think it may come up as we get more questions, but managers are experiencing this very differently than individual contributors. And most of it comes down to communication and prioritization. So if you're a TA lead, the best thing you can do for your team is be super clear about the most important things that are going to help the team right now. And just give them permission to not do anything else, right? That's a really easy thing that you can do as a leader, and ask them to write down that one thing and just stay focused.
Shocking how clarity and communication is a good thing to do. I mean, that is a shocker. And I say that half jokingly. I know it's always been something people have struggled with, particularly in times that are really busy, which is always. But now, obviously, it's been kicked up a whole nother level. And you know what? You were just touching on, I think, some of really great points of topic number 2, which, again, what can TA teams do? Leaders and teams, peers together. What can they do right now to support that company culture and the morale piece at large? What's the data showing?
Yeah, so to the point you just made, a lot of the things we know about what makes people happy and successful in general are true today. And they're just sort of expressed in different ways. And so as we think about preparing for a hopeful recovery and a long time of kind of, riding the trough, and we look at the organizations that appear to be more resilient, whose people appear to be more well and happier at this time and more productive, there are 4 key things we're seeing. One is around check-ins. So these are organizations that have a regular process, either teams, or companies, right, or groups, when I say organization, a regular process of checking in on business goals, development goals, support needs. Right? They have a feedback-seeking culture. They're more apt to seek feedback than to wait to receive it, and they're grateful for that. They are agile with their goals, so they'll set them, but they accept that conditions change, and it's okay to change your goals. You don't get in trouble for that, and they discuss them on a regular basis. And they have a continuous improvement mindset, and this is the toughest one. When your culture has in it a fear-based sort of reaction to the people data to change, right? When we see data, like we have to hit the target or we get in trouble. It's really hard to respond creatively and positively in a crisis. And so leaning in on those, like, let's just get 1% better today. Like, let's not try to solve this all today is just really helpful. And we see those characteristics coming through in the data for the organizations that are successful right now.
See, that's fascinating to me. Did you say earlier, or did I hear you say that burnout rates have doubled?
Yeah, so a typical, when we look at our comments, the tag rate, we tag about 150 things. So workload, staffing, career, culture, burnout, things that you would experience at work. And the hit rate for burnout is typically around 2.7%. And from March 18th to April 18th-ish, it went from 2.7% to 5.4%.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Now, again, I think that's, again, you sometimes hear 2.4%. That doesn't seem like a lot, but doubling is huge in my opinion. And think about 5% of your workplace, let's just say, is completely burned out, which is physical, mental, like a health crisis. I think that's really concerning for me and a lot of other people. And I really love that you have shared that one of the most effective ways that people can support each other is by having these cadenced, really just short one-on-ones. Yeah. I love that because a one-on-one can be 10 minutes. I mean, just show that doesn't have to be, a real long thing, because most of us say we don't have the time. And a lot of people don't have the time right now. I mean, they really feel they don't based on your data. And so do you have any insights, some how-tos on how you can have those conversations in a way that works and is effective?
Yeah, a couple of tips that we've seen work, and we've studied a lot about why people don't engage in these conversations, because our platform is designed to make it easier, and so it's something that is core to our work. One of the simple things is scheduling. We don't think we have time for it, but if you look at your calendar 2 weeks out, you have a lot more time than you do if you look at your calendar 2 days out. And so, if you sort of understand that and schedule these things to be regular, and know that you don't necessarily have to use the full 30 minutes, but it's on there if you need it. So that's one key tip. The second is to make sure that the owner of the meeting is not the manager, but the individual contributor. And that person sets the agenda. The manager's there to support. But we find that if you put the ownership with your ICs, with your employees, they will ask you for what they need if you give them permission in the space. And then the third piece is just structure. Just have some questions you come back to on a regular basis. We have 5 things we draw from. We don't do them every time, sort of a list of do we want to check in on any of these 5 things? And they're about, am I feeling fit in my role? Am I feeling aligned to goals? Am I feeling supported in what I need to get done? Am I feeling motivated? And do I feel like I'm learning and growing? That's my team and what we've seen kind of in the data. But those 3 simple things is where I would start in terms of improving check-ins.
Fantastic. Easy, short, sweet, actionable. Yeah. Love it. All right. So I'm looking here at the back channel. We've got another question, because of course we got to talk a little bit about remote work.
Sure.
We got you. So one of our viewers says, how do you keep team connections strong in remote environments? And how are we seeing remote work impact employee morale?
Yeah. So there's a bit of a data problem in understanding the impact of remote work on morale, because everybody's working remotely, so we don't have a comparison group. But we are seeing in the comments experiences that are related to working from home relate to burnout and lack of well-being. We're also seeing in the demographics people who tend to be parent age having some declines in scores. I think some of the things that have stuck with me the most as I've looked at the data, looked at the patterns, and read the comments is the number of people who say, I'm working remotely and my manager doesn't trust me. And that's a miserable experience. And I'm being checked on every hour. I I'm nervous. I'm anxious about that. And, so I think a big part of remote work is trust. I think a big part of remote work, when we see it, so what we see in the data and the comments, is around resourcing and communication. So people who weren't distant before are distant now. So if they're new to remote work, to make sure you connect with them, and then connecting with others. If you didn't, one of the simple things we're seeing work is take whatever regular processes you had for connecting and just try to replicate them and see how that works. If you try to do something entirely new or too big, it's going to fail. The other thing is to work on things together. Like, there's no better way to connect with one another than to take a little project and work on it together, right? Two people on a project who haven't worked together. So find work to do together.
No, I think that's great. And the whole trust, to me, the whole foundation, what I've seen in organizations I've worked for, is that if trust, a lot of people say, well, here are the different things, and the foundation is what's your recruiting process, what's your this process. Really, to me, it's really about what have you done for trust and feedback, and then you can build everything on top of it. So I think I'm so glad that's what the data says.
Yeah.
Yeah, and by the way, I say data and data. I don't know which one's right. So
me too.
I would go with it. We're good. All right, Justin, we've got another question from Zachary. So thank you, Zachary. Says many have been instructed to work on a reduced or 80% work week. So how is this affecting productivity, well-being, and motivation? Any insights on that?
Yeah. So what we see, so there's an interesting piece in the data. We see this always in that. In every organization, there are some people who are asked to do relatively more than others, right? And sometimes it's seen by the people who give them more work as a reward. So you're a high performer, so I'm going to give you more work, right? But high performers in the data, what they tell us is, the only reward I get from being a high performer is to be overloaded, right? This is similar of people we've asked to cut back. For those people we've talked to and the data we've looked at where people are in reduced workload situations, they are feeling like they still have to produce 100% on an 80% workload. So just setting productivity aside for a second, I think you need to make sure that we're setting clear expectations that we are going to reduce the number of things you're doing. We're asking you to deliver by 20%, not just reduce your days by 20%. And then I think you will get high productivity, actually. I think if you look at some of the experiments recently across the globe, including that our grandparent organization, Microsoft, with 4-day work weeks, there's actually a lot of evidence showing that they can be more productive than a 5-day work week in certain situations. It's just about trusting people and being focused to be productive in that time.
Yeah, and I think what's interesting when I've talked with different clients or HR pros, TA pros regarding remote work, a lot of them have said, I find it amazing that my leader never micromanaged me before. But now they're micromanaging me all the time, and I hate it. I don't get it. And usually that's more of a manager problem, I would tend to think, than the employee problem. So hard to tell. We've got a lot of great feedback still coming in. Vanessa, thank you, Vanessa. She says that she agrees totally with you about the feedback setting from what we talked about a little bit earlier. Hey, let's have this cadenced conversation. Another audience member, Sining Chan, she says, often she finds that managers are afraid to do this. I believe carve out time because they're under immense pressure from their managers to deliver. So do you have any tips for managers on what they can focus on so they can do the nurturing for their team members?
Yes. We go into a lot of detail. I'll do a quick plug because it's a free resource. We go into a lot of detail on the COVID Manager Toolkit that's on the Glint Inc. website. So you can get the full version there. I'll give you the 60-second version here. It all comes back to how we set goals and what we ask people to be accountable for, and then the examples that we set, right? And so if we say to leaders that your only objective is to hit these potential financial metrics, then that's what they'll do. But if we say to them that, and I'm not suggesting we set targets based on employee engagement, that has all sorts of other issues associated with it. But if we say to them, we do expect you to check in on a regular basis and understand what your people need. And we do actually, from a top-down perspective, we're going to ask you about your goals on a regular basis. This is the thing we've seen most effective. If my boss is asking me about my goals, I am checking in with my team regularly, who's helping me meet those goals, to see what kind of progress we're making. And so that's a key part of it. It's just shifting the accountability to include responsibility for having these conversations. The other piece is making it easier. Like, we come from TA, from HR, from support organizations, trying to be helpful. And we say, here we are to help, and we have this great new process for you. And managers look at us and say, you got to be kidding. Like, I have so many processes I have to deal with. And so, one of the things I think is really important to focus on as you try to help your managers do more of this is make it easy, put it in the workflow. Even if it's just starting with, here are 3 questions, and set them in your weekly reminder for your meetings, like, one quick tip at a time. Just make it super easy for managers to start engaging in these behaviors and habits.
Yeah. So don't over engineer, overthink a lot of this.
No, managers will reject it. They just do not have the cognitive space, except the ones who are already doing it anyway. And those are the ones we're trying to help, right?
Oh yeah. And I've been there. It's hard. It's a hard thing. All right. So we got to keep moving forward. We've got a lot more great content to talk about. So the third topic, why is it important to focus efforts on company culture now, not just now, but in the critical months to come? What are your insights on that, Justin?
Yeah, so, I've been through a couple of recessions in this industry. And one of the things that's been great to see this time is the percentage of leaders in organizations who have responded by completely cutting their investments in people, maybe overstating it, is less than it was in the past. And so I think there have been some lessons learned from the past, and that if you cut back too far, you're not able to recover, right? And cutting back spend on your people isn't really a good long-term decision, presuming you might recover. And so that's one thing that's been really good to see in this. At the same time, I think we have to accept the reality that some businesses are impacted differently than others, which means for some people, especially high performers, they have a talent market, right? And so not everybody is left in a situation where they don't have good job mobility. So the couple things in the data that we see, I think, that help us out here. One is a reminder that managers, especially middle managers, always take on an additional burden. But right now, they're feeling especially stressed. If we look at how individual contributors talk about prioritization and how managers talk about prioritization, ICs feel pretty good. Managers are really stressed, right? They are not clear on how they're supposed to direct their teams, and yet their teams are, which means the managers are carrying that burden on behalf of their teams, and they're protecting the rest of their teams for it.
Yes. I think the high performer, the top talent. I know intuitively I have in the past, as a TA pro and as a TA HR pro, have said, wow, it's about to be an employer's market, right? Actually, I think it is an employer's market right now. And so we simply think there's so much talent out there to choose from, et cetera, et cetera. I read a Harvard Business Review article just the other day that said, so companies intuitively cut their TA teams because we got to save costs. However, the lesson learned from the 2008 recession, though, is that also was a time, their biggest lesson was that they also made the great decision to focus on hiring the best top talent. And usually it was from competitors. So it wasn't the folks out there who've been laid off, which a lot of those folks were also targeted as well. But I think that's been this interesting conundrum. But also TA folks knowing that, there is still a lot of talent out there, regardless if it's an employer's market or employee's market. So guess what? We've got some more feedback. It's a live question from AV. He says, it seems employers' biggest concerns are issues related to trust. I know you touched on that a little bit earlier, Justin, of employers working remotely. So how can they take that leap of trust and simply become listeners and respect the space of employees in order to trust them? And I think they're regarding to managers. And we touched on this a little bit, but I think it's important we talk about it a little bit more.
Yeah. Well, so trust is a two-way street, right? So if we give trust, we tend to get it back. It's not something that's easy to shift in a culture, right? Something that we will work years to help a company build, or in a new executive who comes in will work years to help rebuild in a company. It starts by listening. It starts by reaching out to those employees and asking them, what do you need? How can we help you? Right? Let's assume we're all adults and we want to hit these same goals because, my success and the business's success are tied together. What do you need? What do you need to help you being remote? and you just flip it. Instead of what do we need from you to be productive while you're remote, the simplest thing to do for a short-term solution is flip it. The other thing I would say is give them something, right? And this is especially true of high performers and people we really don't want to lose, or whom we accept we might lose. And when things recover, we really want them to come back. We want them to say really good things so that our employer brand remains strong, and is to provide people an opportunity to learn, right? The biggest mistake we always make in HR, TA, any of these programs that we put out is to focus on extrinsic motivators. If you do this, I'll give you that. And the truth is, like, nothing is as powerful as intrinsic motivation. And learning is one of those really secret, easy ways to tie into intrinsic motivation. So give people an opportunity to grow, even if they're only going to be there for another few months, and you will be rewarded for that.
I could not agree more. So it looks like we're about out of time, Justin. So I just want to throw it back to you very quickly. So we've talked about great stuff. You have wonderful insights. Glint has been, and this is just my own opinion as the person who's been in the industry for a long time, Glint is a leader in this space for sure, as far as engagement is concerned. So are there any other things, any other parting words that you'd want to give our audience today?
Oh, I really want to thank everybody and wish you all well. I know it's a tough time. I also want you to know that, we take our mission to heart at Glint to help people be happy and successful. And we've been giving a lot of things away. And so please follow me. I'm posting daily, weekly with new insights and resources, and make sure you have things that'll help you help your people and help yourself. Yep.
Justin, it has been an absolute pleasure talking with you more. I mean, honestly, I can keep this conversation going forever, and you don't want that, because I really will go on forever. Never and ever. No, but this is so critical and so vital. So I'm so thrilled that we've gotten to know each other a little better, and that you've got to share your insights with this great audience for sure. For sure. All right, my friends. So that's it for today's episode. Now, you have to tune in next time for episode number 3. It's coming at you June 2nd. It's going to be at 10 a.m. Pacific, 1 p.m. Eastern, and the topic is reskilling and redeploying talent. And guess who's hosting it? My partner in crime at Recruiting Toolbox, John Vlastelica. And the special guest is going to be Steve Mayer of Procore Technologies. Also, I want to let you know, got to keep your eye out for some different posts and references to the different things we've talked about today, different links also for the next episode, because we want you to join us there as well. And we also want your feedback. Be on the lookout for some links to a short poll, of course, a very short poll, because this is for you. We want to hear from you about what's worked, what we can improve upon, and more importantly, what topics you want to hear and learn about next. So thanks again for tuning in, all of you in LinkedIn land. Please stay safe and take care. This is Dawn. Thanks.